Okay, in this video I'm going to talk about the states of matter. I'm going to talk about solids, liquids, and gases, and I'm just going to focus on those three main states that we observe regularly. Solids have fixed shape and fixed volume. Basically what's going on with them... Oh, I'm on eraser here, hold on a second. There we go. Basically what's going on with them is that the attractive forces between the particles are very, very, very strong. And so, the particles aren't moving that fast. And so what that means is the particles all get stuck in whatever spot they started in, and they can vibrate back and forth at about any sort of location, but they can't actually leave that location. So the particles have a fixed position, and the only kind of movement they can do is vibration. This is different for different materials. Some materials have very strong attraction between their particles, and so they can get very hot and still remain a solid, like metals. And some materials, like water, have like medium attraction between their particles, and so they can be a solid at low temperatures but not at high temperatures. And then some materials have very little attraction between their particles, something like carbon dioxide, and that has to be very, very cold before it's going to be slow enough to stay in its fixed shape and its fixed volume. Liquids have a variable shape and fixed volume. Basically, the particles all hang out around each other. They don't spread out. They're free to sort of slide around in this location. Like this guy could come all the way up here, but they don't actually fly away from each other or spread out. So we can say that these guys can vibrate and they can rotate. And one way to think about this is they can sort of slip slide past each other. But they can't actually leave the system. If they leave the system, they become a gas. Here, we sort of have a medium attraction between the particles in comparison to the speed of the objects. If you heat a liquid up too much, you make the particles move too fast, it'll turn into a gas. But if you slow them down, they'll end up in a fixed spot and it'll turn into a solid. But right now you're sort of in that middle position where they want to stay together, but not enough to hold them in their fixed positions. Finally, we have gases. Gases have a variable shape, and so they fill their container, and a variable volume. Gases are basically particles that are not really even seeing each other. So the attraction between the particles is small in comparison to the motion of the particles. These guys have all kinds of motion. So they vibrate, rotate, but they can also translate. They can actually leave the bulk material and fly about. So if you had a container like a balloon or something, they can fill the entire balloon. So remember that temperature refers to how fast the particles in a substance are moving. So the higher the temperature, the faster the particles move. So state changes occur when the speed of a particle becomes too much for the attraction of the particles, or the speed of a particle goes so slow that the attraction of the particle starts to win. So here are all the words that we use for different changes of state. When a liquid becomes a gas, we call that vaporization. The liquid particles get too fast to be held in one location and they spread out. When the gas particles cool down enough that they want to hang out together, we call that condensation, and it becomes a liquid. A liquid going to a solid, we use the word freezing, and that's when the liquid particles slow down to the point where they not only aren't going to leave each other, but they're actually going to line up in a rigid structure. And finally, if we have the solid and we heat that up, then eventually it'll go, there's usually a middle ground where the particles still want to be around each other, but they're moving too fast to stay in a fixed shape, and so they form a liquid. We call that melting. Solids can go straight to gas. Not every type of material has a liquid form, and if that happens, we call that sublimation. And in the same state with those same substances, if they go from gas to solid, we call that deposition. So those are the states of matter, and that's why state changes occur, and that's what we call the different state changes.